What's up? What's up? Good morning, good evening, good night, good afternoon, good dusk, good dawn. Shout out to my Spotify listeners, Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Google Podcasts, and YouTube if you're watching in. Thanks for giving me a reason to get dressed. Coming live from my voice to your phone, computer, headphones, car stereo, smartwatch, Bluetooth speaker. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here right now. We were able to connect from the time that I recorded this to the time that you're listening in. Let's take a moment and be present that you're listening in right now. Recognize that it is now. Whether your right now is working, running, exercising, cleaning, laying down, flying, driving. Let's be grateful we're alive. No, seriously, we're alive, baby. Failure can be frightening. However, as Winston Churchill reminds us, success is all about going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. This is I Will Not Lose podcast. Let's jump right in. Oh, man. This one's going to be good today. I threw all my notes out. About an hour ago, I was putting together something. I had been working on it all week, putting my notes together. It was going to be all about derivative work of arts and originality. And I realized I can't tie that into success learned from failure. You know, this is all about success learned from failure. So I threw my notes out. I gave my buddy a call, V. Alvarado. I had a conversation with her, and she does what she always does and really kind of put me in the mood to pod and talk. You know, we had some great conversations, and it was just about, you know, what are you doing? What are you trying to cater to? Are you trying to make things that people want to hear? Are you worried? And are you putting yourself with the pressure of a large podcast with an entire team? You know, what are you really doing? And as we talked, we started putting together some notes. And I thought, you know, this is really good. And as an early listener, somebody who helped craft the show, and somebody who's constantly commenting and giving feedback on the show, I take her words really seriously. So the goal is a conversation between friends. You know, it was something that I look to do. So even, it's funny, in the first episode, I let an F-bomb drop, or I had cursed. And then I realized as I'm uploading episodes, I never check the curse word box. So there's a level of professionality that I'm doing consciously or unconsciously where I guess I'm just not cursing. So I want to be more relaxed. I realized I'm pushing, how do I say it? I'm pushing myself too hard, or I'm holding myself to too high of a standard when you guys aren't even doing that. So that can't be healthy. So as we started talking, it's like, you know, I think it's important to really look at how far we've come. And so listen back to the goal is to fail. And I thought, are my goals still the same? Is the goal still to fail? Absolutely. Did I make some sort of idea of success in my head, something unachievable that I am going to strive forever and burn myself out for? I hope not. So, importance of recognizing how far we've come is because as we make mistakes, it's important to know that's just part of the growth and that's part of the learning. Reflecting on the progress that we've made since the mistake, it can kind of give us perspective, help us reframe it as a valuable learning perspective. A valuable learning experience rather than a failure. It's all about self-awareness, humility, and these are things that I'm gaining through the podcast. So that was the goal when it was time to start. And I thought, rather than chug along and get further and further, let's take a step back. Let's take a look at what was the reasons for starting the podcast? Are we still hitting those goals, or are we going to change and move forward in a different direction? So the point was to adopt a growth mindset. And that was forcing myself to think about the positive. You know, you have a positive and a negative in everything. You have a faith, you have a fear. You have good, bad. You know, this isn't like a good and evil or Jedi Sith type thing. This is more about thinking on the positives, this is as simple as cup is half empty, cup is half full, depending on your perspective. I think the way that I look at it is if I have a deadline weekly, it helps me know that at some point during that week, I'm going to have a positive growth mindset towards turning something towards a success. So I thought this could be a pretty cool thought experiment, and I challenged myself to do it. Here we are 3-4 months later, and it's all about admitting mistakes, creating things. So I have lacked on the stories, I'll admit. And I thought, don't be so hard on myself. V says to me, people love seeing the growth. People love coming along for the journey. So everything can't be too perfect and too clean, You know how to make stuff look good. So just have fun with it. Go back to having fun. And it's funny. It's like you get this pressure when you're about to hit record, like, man, everything's going to hang on the next words that I say. And then I went through a phase where we're cutting the stuff up into shorts. And as we do the podcast, it's like, what can we say that goes viral? And we'll chop that up and we'll put it on TikTok and we'll go viral and a whole bunch of listeners will come to the show. And we did that. And the clip that went viral was like a side conversation in a podcast that wasn't even about that in the episode. Well, it was the Midjourney and ChatGPT about AI, the If You Can't Beat 'Em, Join 'Em episode. And I had put my Midjourney tryouts up on Instagram and ridiculous amount of likes. So likes, views, any of that stuff, engagement. So there's no point in trying to plan what's going to go viral. I don't think anybody that goes viral with some of these reels is actually intending to. It seems to work quite counterintuitively. So having a deadline weekly. So it was funny when we first started out, we said we were going to do Gil Thompson. We were going to have an episode with him. I had no case studies for how long it took. I do have a background in editing and audio engineering, so I didn't go into it completely blind, but it took me about 2 weeks on and off in my spare time to edit, get all the volume correct, the transitions for Gil's episode. And it wanted to coincide with his album dropping. So I think a week or so beforehand, we're like, hey, do you think we can have it ready by Friday? And I was like, well, yep, I'm dropping every Friday from now till the next however long. And it just, it was out there. And I thought instantly, if this takes me 2 weeks, how am I going to drop a weekly podcast? So it was a challenge, and we were able to keep up with it by making a few budget decisions, a few ideas about when we would have guests, what sort of guests we would have, how many camera angles, all that stuff came down to how can we put this. But it's not a bad thing. Sometimes it sucks when you have to go and drop a podcast and that there's a date that you set in your mind that it's going to drop, but it's just not ready yet, or life happens and things happen. But deadlines can serve as a powerful motivator. I forget where the quote came from, but I once heard the greatest inspiration is a deadline. This goes with creativity and stuff like that. If you know when something needs to be done, it helps you prioritize your tasks. You can manage them more effectively. It is kind of an art being able to be calm under the pressure, but increased focus, increased energy, they're often heightened when you're getting close to a deadline, versus if I said, I'm just going to drop the podcast whenever the podcast is ready. I mean, sure, there'd probably be some amazing episodes with insane visuals and transitions and do a ton more writing and prep, but it just wouldn't push. It doesn't give you that challenge. Like, listen, nothing in life that feels comfortable really gets you further. Like, everything comes from uncomfort. Everything comes from taking yourself out of your comfort zone and pushing yourself. So make realistic deadlines. Don't tell yourself, if I honestly thought that it wasn't possible to put something out every single week, I'd take the liberty to make it a bi-weekly or a monthly show or something like that. But as I'm talking to V, she's like, have fun with it. Just have fun. So I have a conversation with my son that we're going to be dropping in season 2. The whole idea of season 2 coming up is exciting because it's documenting the growth. People ask, why have a season in a podcast? It's really about having some sort of set. So goals that I want to do in addition to sponsorship, I mean, there's all sorts of giveaways, there's all sorts of fun subscriber stuff, structures that I want to add to the show, different guests that we want to have on Unlimited Caliber. It'd be great to have additions to the staff and team. But you know what? That's all part of the journey, and you can't rush that. It's no fun. It becomes something that you just have to do. And I never want to say I have to record a podcast this week. I want to say I get to record a podcast. I mean, look how cool this is. People talk about, hey, I want to do that. I want to see what gets into it. And people have even reached out to me and said, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to start a podcast. Would you be able to help me? Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Let's talk about it. Here's some stuff you could pick. Here's some equipment. In fact, if I'm not using one of these mics or I upgrade, let's keep in contact so we can go with it. Being part of groups online, Reddit, and things like that. I've discovered new podcast hosts, improved all my mic technique, all by going and looking and just being part of a community. So being able to post and say, I have a podcast. Somebody who would say, oh man, that's not like Joe Rogan, or that's derivative of these other podcasts. He's trying to be this or something. Listen, I'm not trying to be anybody. The goal is and always has been to fail, learn, and have fun along the way. I did find myself getting away from the latter, the fun along the way stuff. So did adopt a growth mindset, have pushed myself, super proud to look back at everything that happened so far. But man, in the first episode we had, in the second episode as well, even in Gil Thompson's episode, there was a smoke alarm going off. Completely unprofessional, but you know what? It's happened before. And some of the greatest moments in radio or podcasting were not planned. They weren't perfect. They didn't have a crew of people listening in or editing things out in the background. So, it is what it is. And as far as dropping on time, you know what? Nobody drops on time. And so if I'm doing this as a hobbyist, why should I put myself, why should it be the end of the world? You should see me, man. I get totally upset. I'm like, oh my God, the podcast isn't going to drop on time. Like there's tens of thousands of people. And you know what? Even if there was that many people waiting on the drop, people who do this full time and professionally don't always drop on time. It is great to say. And, I'd love to look at a full year and say I dropped every day at the same time, the exact same time. But you know what? I'm looking in analytics and people take a couple days to get to it anyway. That's why I moved the drop date from Friday to Monday, because you're not going to listen to it over the weekend. I'd rather you catch up on last week's episode over the weekend and you're not going to miss anything. I don't cover current events, just if you're taking the initiative to search for a new drop and seeing that it's not there, that's a win for me. That's a win. That means that I'm creating something that people want to come back to. So, yep, you don't drop on time. It definitely fucks up the algorithm. And I'm sure somebody says, oh, fuck this guy. He didn't drop on time. He's not taking this seriously. But you know what? It'll drop. It'll drop. There'll be one episode a week. And you'll get it when it comes to your smartwatch, Bluetooth speaker, headphones, PC, whatever you want to do. I did believe in myself. I did come into this believing in myself, but it's amazing to see how many people said, oh, that's something that you should have been doing. And not necessarily that I was meant to podcast, but just that I seem comfortable doing it. I'm in my bag, as some would say. And that means the world to me. Like, that's super awesome. This is the one thing. I mean, I've been in multiple businesses, and this is the one thing that everybody has said, at least to my face, yeah, that's definitely something you should be doing in. I'll tune in, I'll check in. And then whether you do or you don't, that's fine. There's no pressure. There's even the podcast that I follow, I miss episodes. So when people are like, oh, I missed last week's episode, I feel bad. That means the world to me that you're listening in and checking into it. And it's something that we can discuss in person. So point of this episode, the goal is to fail part 2. That's probably what I'll title it. And I'll just check in every quarter, every couple of months, and talk about where we're headed, what we're doing. I do kind of mention that throughout the season as we go. And just know, because I try my best to make this look good, sound great, I'm still a hobbyist. I'm still an amateur. So be easy. And as long as you give me that respect to know that this is something that I'm taking time out of my week to provide content for, and you can choose to listen to it, you can choose not to, but I'm doing this pro bono to put great quality content out there, and it's beneficial for me in the meantime. So it's a win-win for everyone. I wanted to shout out this card I was given to a gift from, I don't know if she wants me to shout her out on the podcast, but I will mention her after I talk to her in person if it's cool. But she gave me this card. She knows who it is. It says, every failure brings you one step closer to success. She's a teacher. She gave this to her students. So this is a pretty cool card. I'm going to keep this as a little talisman with the card. So if just one person goes and switches their mindset or says, that's great, or gets one episode out of it, I think that's absolutely great. I don't need more than one person, although they are there and they have spoken to me, but just to remind myself, keep going, to check in, say, hey, you've got something that's super dope. Even if you stop now, to be able to have 3 months worth of content, audio and visual put up there that you did, all while not taking too much time away from your career, family, things like that. I think that's a win. And at every point, these are real crossroads people come across. Like, every artist has said, I don't want to create anymore, or there's no money in this, or why am I doing this? I'll never be good enough. I mean, they look at another artist and it's like, wow, I can't create at that level. How did that person do that? Every podcaster has said, hey, this is too much work, or we can't drop this, or that last episode was corny. It's like, you move on, these podcasts. One of the things that I did keep in mind as I structure this is longevity and being able to go back and listen to an episode. So the Kanye episode, that's going to die. People aren't going to be talking about that forever. But switching and getting into some more serious topics or growth mindsets, stories of success learned from failure. Public announcement, probably going to change these stories of success, switch it more to growth mindset, to give an idea, to give people who don't know me, or people who are just discovering this podcast online, which I know is extremely rare. People don't just stumble across new podcasts. The game is completely saturated. So if you're listening to this, you probably listened to it from a share or from somebody telling you, hey, check this guy out. Those are the people that I'm really, really appreciative for you to go and say, hey, check this out. This is something this guy's doing, means that I'm putting out at least enough quality that people will share it, because people do not share mediocre or bad. They definitely don't share bad content. So unless it's to laugh at it. So if you are a technical whiz and you want to laugh at my lighting or my video ability, that's super cool. If there's little mic sounds or mouth sounds that I'm not editing out, I will, like I said, it's part of the journey. I will put more time into editing as we put it together. If that turns you off, come back in a year. We'll still be here. God willing. All right. Let's see. I'm just going to check how far we are. I have one more thing in my notes, but yep, we're right at that 20-minute mark or so. So we're going to drop to the outro. Thank you for listening in so far. This is I Will Not Lose Podcast, stories of success learned from failure. To support the show, visit the website shows.acast.com/I Will Not Lose and subscribe at your favorite podcast player. Share the episode link, leave a comment. Your contribution is appreciated. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing. Be safe.